Hi, this is Dan Sullivan, and I'm here with Mike Koenigs, and we're doing our next episode, which is actually a continuation of a previous episode. And it's thinking about great who's that you need in your life. And that what you can bring to great who's is that you give great who's to, you give great purpose to great who's. So there's a lot of people who have great talents, they have great skills and everything else, but they can't make up their own purpose for the use of their skills, and that's your job.
And one of the things that Dan does right away, he rips off the old Band-Aid about population and resources and us running out, and gives us some evidence of the fact that that isn't happening at all. And the other thing that Dan said earlier today that I thought was pretty funny is great who's are not looking for schmucks. So we're going to talk about how to keep really great people, to inspire them, get them focused on impact, and keep them around as well. So all that in this episode and a lot more. So keep listening, keep watching. So this episode's all about creating purpose for other people and giving great who's, great purposes. Dan, you said something very profound earlier today. I know you're going to talk about where it came from, but there's only one resource on the planet, and that's human ingenuity. And so only human ingenuity makes everything else valuable, and there are no natural resources. Who said that, and where'd that come from?
Yeah, this is a professor of statistics. I think he was at the University of Illinois in Chicago. They have a Chicago campus, and he's a statistician. So basically, he just looks at, statistical trends, statistical proof. And one of the he was very active. He's dead now, but he was very active in the 50s and 60s, where there were a lot of doom and gloom warnings about rising population that was going to create worldwide starvation. And anyway, he just, he didn't have any, he didn't have a dog in the fight here. He was just a statistician. So what he did, he says, I just wonder what the impact is actually of when populations get bigger, what actually happens to, first of all, food, and then what happens, to other aspects of people's lives, quality of life. And he studied this, for about 10, 15 years. And his research just came to a conclusion right about the time when all the warnings were being made. So it made him a natural foil for, he was the positive side of countering people who are very, very negative. And what he discovered is, going back through every society he could find that kept statistics and everything else, that there's a total positive relationship, that the more people you have in a society, the better life gets for those people, and that the food is more abundant, and there's more opportunity for them. There's more different things that people can do. Education goes up, and lifespans increase. You don't have, infant mortality is, for a lot of reasons, but it's extraordinary poverty that causes infant mortality. They run out of food, they get sick, they got bad water, and everything like that. Well, this was, first of all, there are certain communities which are totally on the side of apocalypse, and the academic community is one of them, because a lot of them get their funding for making really scary predictions. If you came out with a paper that said everything's getting better, you get less funding than if you come out with something that says, no, the world's going to end in 12 years. And unless we totally cut our lifestyles by 80% to save ourselves, and, we go back to walking rather than riding in cars and things like that, all the nonsense. And then Hollywood gets on board, and Hollywood loves disaster. Happy stories, they're not the draw that global doom is. So anyway, he was kind of like a lonely voice out there, but he just, first of all, he was he wasn't argumentative or anything. And, he didn't get angry or anything else, but he says, you give me any prediction and I can show you statistically that what you're talking about is impossible. But just based on everything that's happened up until now, he says that if you increase your population, everything gets better. Okay. The only thing that will screw it up is the government kind of trying to interfere in people's just natural expansion of capability and, their quality of life. So anyway, that's where this started. But that one idea, and he said, now here's the reason why people said, we're running out of this resource. We're running out of this resource. He said, resources aren't discovered. Resources are invented. And he says, so therefore there's only one resource, and it's human ingenuity. Everything that we find valuable today wasn't discovered somewhere and dug up. It was actually, something was dug up, and then human ingenuity transformed it into something useful. So that's the basic setting here. And I said, that's kind of like the law of gravity. I mean, if it's true, it's kind of like a fundamental law that you should pay attention to increasing human ingenuity. And, so what are the conditions for increasing human ingenuity? And I think it's smart people cooperating with each other.
Well, and I'll just give everyone one of the quotes, because there's an article that takes on what Dan was just talking about here. Is, first of all, it was Paul Ehrlich who wrote The Population Bomb in 1968. That started this big thing, versus Julian Simon, who you're referencing, said humans innovate their way out of resource shortages, and that people are the ultimate resource.
Yeah.
So,
very famous book is called The Ultimate Resource. Very, very thick book. And it's just stacked full of statistics. I mean, he's, this is not a page turner.
Yeah. Well, it's. I'm going to dig deeper in there, and I'll make sure that in our show notes we've got a link to this this article. But I do want to go down the other hole, which was giving great who's great purposes.
Yeah.
And because we just came from a free zone experience today, we had a lot of very smart, successful business owners, and we're always looking for, how do we add great team members? And Tucker Max is on today, and he said something really interesting. Some of it was actually towards the end of our meeting today that I thought was very profound. And he said, I had a big moment where I realized that anytime I feel insecure, I need a who. And so he was going to go off and canceled his meetings to find all the areas that he feels secure or insecure, and find some who's, and ask himself the question, what competent who's do I need right now? But that by itself isn't enough. We need to give the who's purpose when they work with us or for us, however that arrangement's set up. So can you talk a little bit about giving great who's great purposes?
Yeah. Well, the other, that I want to acknowledge, and this was Dave Osborne, who was a speaker. And Dave is extremely well known, more in Western United States, because he's out of Dallas or Austin. I'm not sure where he's out, but he's a big Keller Williams, big real estate, residential real estate brokerage. But he's got a lot of different businesses. And, when he talked, I just really got the feeling of someone who, first of all, has really come to peace with themselves and just kind of knows, where he's a great who for other people. In other words, that he's someone, he can't do everything, but there's certain things he does. And I was very, very impressed with him. But he made a statement. People were asking him, well, what was the breakthrough realization you had? And he said, it was really funny. He said it was the realization that 80% of the most capable people in the world, 80% of the most talented people in the world need someone to give them a purpose for their talents. And I sat there, oh man, I said, wow, I mean, Joe Polish has this great Napoleon quote that apparently the Emperor Napoleon said that my whole life changed when I realized the man would die for a blue ribbon. All I need is a million blue ribbons.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
the whole thing is that you can be talented and you can have skill and everything, but one of your skills isn't giving yourself a purpose. Okay. And then there's a whole bunch of people who aren't particularly talented in this, and they're not talented in this. And you can go in a 360 degree. But there's one thing in the middle they're really talented is they have a phenomenal ability to give other people purpose. As a matter of fact, Mark Twain actually wrote a book on that called Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
Tom Sawyer gave everybody, there's this fence here and you can paint it. You can be part of the painting team, and I'll provide the paint and the brushes. But if you don't come up to snuff, you ain't going anywhere near that wall.
Right.
So the whole thing is that I think you're great at giving purpose. I think I'm great at giving purpose. But for a lot of my lifetime, I never took that as a serious skill because I thought everybody had it.
And there was, I don't know who said it. It may have been you towards the tail end of this, which is, what are the biggest purposes that you can come up with for other people's great talent? And when you do that and do it well, you don't have to do any of the hows. And something that popped in, I don't remember again who said this, but the notion that where we feel resistance as entrepreneurs and business owners is as soon as we think we've got this great idea and suddenly we get resistance because we're like, that means I'm going to have to do this, and this. We get stuck in the doing and the how trap and realize that, first of all, identifying the right how, but then giving them the purpose. Again, I want to deconstruct purpose for a moment and how to craft the most inspirational purpose for our right fit hows.
Yeah. Well,
or our who's who will do the how. Yeah.
I mean, we have, we've got some standard tools in Strategic Coach. And the one that I think that, is the easiest and fastest to do it is the impact filter, where, I find that first of all, I'm good at doing it for myself, but what I'm doing for myself is actually creating projects that attracts other people's teamwork. Okay, so one of my projects is to write 100 small books in 100 quarters. Okay, so I wrote this up as a project. I said, we've already done 80% of this. I said every quarter I'm turning out written material, and if you add up the pages, it's not a huge book, but if you reconfigure it in the right size, and that's probably 40 or 50 pages of stuff. So instead of writing a lot of notes here and a lot of notes here, why don't I just pick a topic every quarter and do the writing on that? And we'll just bring out a book every quarter. And it's not to really sell in the marketplace. It's to reinforce the lessons of Strategic Coach for, our entrepreneurs. And they'll buy extra copies and they'll buy it. And the only thing that I would have is that the sale of these materials pays for all the production costs. So in a sense, it's it doesn't really cost, it costs us time, it costs us effort, but it doesn't cost us any money. And it attracts people into the program. So we would have that to go in for it too. So I got started in it and I realized that I was taking on most of the hows. And I was halfway through the first quarter and I said, oh my God, what did I get myself in? And then I started talking to skilled people we have in the program. And my editor said, look, she said, I'll handle the entire organization of it. So you don't have to think about that. And she said, I've been writing your stuff and editing your stuff for 15 years. She says, just talk to me. So why don't you have an outline and I'll ask you questions and we'll transcribe it and I'll write it in a copy. but she's not really a writer. And so she got, we did one or two of the books, and they were good. They were good books, and, people liked them. But she said, this is going to wear me out. She says, I'm not this type of writer. I'm an editor. So she said, I have a brother who's actually a copywriter, and he's, he just finished a major project with a big corporation, and he's free right now. What would you think about bringing him in? He brought him in, and then Shannon Waller came in as the interviewer, and Shannon's a superb interviewer. So bit by bit, I just made a video on it that we're sending out to all the clients. And it's the 10 people who are on the team, each talking about what their unique ability is and then what the teamwork is like. So that's all driven with an impact filter. And, the one thing that I did is I could give purpose to 10 different people to produce a project once a quarter for 100 quarters, and it's got we're good at it. And, there's a schedule to it and everything like that. And it's done a lot of good. And then there's been surprises because some of the books got picked up as major books by a major publisher and did it. But what I'm saying is that entrepreneurs, I think almost by definition, have the ability of creating a purpose in the future that one doesn't exist yet. In other words, it's something that's created in the imagination, but they're so compelling and persuasive with it that other people will say, well, I'll add my capabilities to that. That's great. I'm good at that. I can handle this part of it. And another person says, well, I can handle this part of it. But short of the person creating the purpose, those capabilities wouldn't organize themselves to do anything.
And that, so it really is driven by impact at the end of the day. So the impact filter, it's properly named, but it's sort of like, here's the impact you're going to have on the organization. Here are the results, outcomes, benefits. So it has to be something immediate.
I'm actually not telling them how to do it. I'm saying I'm depending that you'll know what to do with this. I'm just saying what it has to look like when it's finished.
And through my lens, from an outsider looking in, I think in the 15 years I've known you and the 8 years I've been in coach, you're creating the best content you've ever created. It's certainly the most engaging, purposeful, and the books are meaningful, applicable. It's like you are really close to the bone. And from the outside looking in, it looks effortless just because when we see all this content, that the Mike story I have going on is I'm like, God, I'm 20 some years younger than Dan, and I'm like producing 5% of what he is. And again, my comparison brain, that old comparison brain kicks in, and it'll be like, that little demon shows up, and then the escape hatch is always, well, what is the improper thinking that I'm using here? And it always comes back to a lack of an impact filter, a lack of a right fit who, and a scarcity mindset. Those are the three components of the demon that exists. And I share this with you because I'm not the only one. That's something that comes up all the time.
I'm going to give you an insight that was based partially on our first episode that we just completed a bit ago. And this one, and it's your 6 businesses. I keep going back to Mike's 6 businesses. And I said, what if Mike's 6 businesses since the 1980s, that each of them had a permanent 80%? In other words, he did the business to test something out. It was always directed at some new technology to create new opportunities in the just then forming digital world. So you were in a new world and you were creating new vehicles to explore the new world. But what if there's an 80%, maybe it's not 80%, let's say it's 50%. Out of every project, there's a 50% keeper. And then you use that 50% that you get from one project and then it becomes the foundation. It gets stacked. In other words, that the 6 companies are a stack of 650%. Okay. And every time you do one, you actually get a clear sense of just where your unique impact is and your unique value is. And what I'm saying is that I was 70 before I got the project to write 100 books in 100 quarter. I didn't have this. I didn't have this idea when I was your age. Okay, I was 70, and I said, what would be a neat thing for the next 25 years that would keep me excited as I got older? And I said, this is a neat project. This would get me really excited. And so my sense is that it happens when it happens. But the thing is that your past is really important here. There's massive amount. You talk about underutilized resources. Well, you got a lot of underutilized resources in your own past that could come to the focus. And I think it's a combination of being able to uniquely and superbly let other people tell their story. But now we add to it that their story is half of a collaboration with someone else who's got another story, and you put the two stories together to create a collaborative breakthrough in the marketplace. That's all I'm putting together here from our first session and this session.
Another giant wow. I'm going to reinterpret what you just said and turn that into the business opportunity, because if you think about what's happened, Dan, by the way, thank you for that. That was amazing. So it wasn't too long ago, and we lived in the world of the Industrial Revolution, right? Where it was all about steel and metal and putting things together and factories and human robots.
And human beings not screwing up the machinery.
Yeah, right. And then wherever we were before that. And then if you kind of look at where the big revolutions have occurred, we've had the digital revolution, and we're talking the physical, like computers and gadgets and doodads. And then we've had the software revolution, which changed thinking. I think communications revolution. We've had the app revolution. Now we're having virtual reality revolution, where the notion of your physical world, and then there's a digital world that's so much bigger that you can do so many more things in. And as AI kicks in and we have our AI revolution, spending more time as a valuable being and kind of tying it back to this idea of what are the natural resources, our intellectual capacity to profoundly change the planet with a few ideas and a collaboration is immensely powerful. And the let's pretend I'm going to dance around with for a little while is orchestrating a new form of a resource, a natural resource, which is story plus collaboration, knowing that the leverage we gain through software communications and digital. We've seen what Facebook has done for human communications, for better or worse. There are some very profound things that can happen with the right kind of story with all these new tools we have and the multipliers from communications and virtual worlds.
Yeah.
I'm going to dance around with that a little bit more.
One of the things I've noticed, about, since I started coaching, actually, and one of the things in the 80s, so I started my coaching, actually, I was a copywriter at BBDO, a big ad agency, and I knew it wasn't my life. It was copywriting, with a big agency where you have really, tight deadlines for about 3 years is really, really great. It's really great training. But if it's not your future life, you should get out of it after about 2 or 3 years, because you've probably learned everything you need from that skill. And so I just went out and I started coaching, and and it wasn't a big thing then, and entrepreneurism wasn't at the center of, the economy. It was still big, big corporations. And, the personal computer really changed that. I think the breakthrough where entrepreneurs really started becoming major players is with the personal computer and then with software and everything that's happened since then. But the big thing is that there was kind of a weird thing that people were rebelling against the conformity of the industrial age, the big pyramids, big pyramid government, unions, corporations. And my sense is that it was a rebellion. It wasn't actually about individual uniqueness. It was about rugged individualism, that I don't need to do that. And it kind of, it was a rebellion. It wasn't a transformation. And what I noticed, is the emphasis on powerful me's who are on stage. And I was looking at, because I'm kind of in the self-improvement business, if you want to talk about the industry. I'm in
right on
a self-improvement business. And I said, you're going to have to make a decision. Is your future a personality, or is your future a system and a process? Okay. And I said, well, I just don't have the personality for that type of work. And we decided that it was going to be, a system and a process of thinking tools, and that I could coach them, but other people could coach them too. So, we would have a coaching program, and it would grow and everything like that. And I've been very, very resistant to the personal stardom thing, because I've seen that it gets, first of all, it forces people into a personality trap. It's like it's like Paul McCartney, and his originality stopped the day he stopped writing songs with John Lennon. And the same for John Lennon. John Lennon just got sort of mean and dark, and Paul got silly.
And there's two documentaries.
And the other one got silly. But when you put the mean and silly together before, it was profound. But neither of them could do profound. And I began thinking that, and I began looking at people all over, presidential candidates and everything like that in all areas. And I said, this pumping up of the individual and making them a star, it's kind of, there's an end of the road to it, and the person gets trapped in it. And, it attracts it doesn't attract collaborators, it attracts groupies, it attracts everything. So I began thinking that, and it took me a long time to think it through. And I've been very resistant, as you know, I've been very resistant to the spotlight, it's, and everything. And I said, there's a trap in this. But I think that in our two conversations here, we've actually cracked the code on it. The storytelling is totally beneficial, telling your story and beneficial if it's not just about you, it's about a collaboration that you're going to do with another story.
Right. Yeah. A we.
And then I'm excited about it. Because it could be another story. It could be, it could be another story. It could be 3 stories. It could be 4 stories. But I think the storytelling is very crucial to getting clear about the purpose that you have that coincides. In other words, it's very resonant with the purpose that someone else has. And then each of you has something unique to contribute to the collaboration. So that's where I'm seeing the work you are doing. And that's why I don't think you're back to ground zero. I think you've already completed that part. And now you're just adding the collaborative part to it.
Okay.
What? I've been really doing a lot of studying on narcissistic personality disorder. And I think that's where this emphasis on just the individual, goes. It forces you to become very narcissistic, and
Yes.
you're popular for all the wrong reasons. You get popular and then you can't change because you've trapped yourself into a particular image.
That is absolutely true. When you look at, and they'll remain unnamed, but you and I know plenty of gurus who eventually start believing their own BS, and then because they're stuck telling those same stories, they have to live inside the prison of their own design, which doesn't always allow for an expansive reinvention. So that is very deep. So two ideas that I want to run by you. One of them is the notion of the story. So this is the framework that I have thought about a lot. And one of them is just the classic hero's journey that Joseph Campbell created years ago. But the technique, I guess I'll call it a technique I always use, is gathering as much data about someone's future paced life. So they have to use the VCR model, right? It's what's your vision? And frankly, the Dan Sullivan question is the best way to get someone into a future paced version of themselves, and asking them what life will look like 3 years in advance. And then historically, before I knew what the DOS process was, I used a different variation. But what are the dangers standing in the way, or why don't you have it yet? What are the opportunities? And again, I usually frame those in what are the opportunities you'd love to take advantage of, but your obstacles stand in the way, right? The dangers stand in the way. All the hows stand in the way. You don't have the right who's. And then when you ask the S, the strengths, I reframe that a little bit into if you could spend 99% of your time in your unique ability or superpower, what would that look like?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
So after you gather that data, all you really do is repeat a movie starring them with you as their Yoda, Moses, Jesus, Gandalf, or guide, leading the way. And I think the distinction here in this new version is, instead of it being a guru relationship, it's a collaboration relationship. And that's profoundly different than a classic hero's journey, because the guru isn't your friend, right? Yeah.
First of all, that whether it's intended or not, there's a tragic quality to the Joseph Campbell. In the end, the hero is too good for humanity, or they're too good for the people, and they're lonely. They're very lonely. They're by themselves. And I said, I said, not me.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big party guy. There's got to be lots of parties.
Yep. Got to be some wine.
There's got to be wine, and there's got to be interesting people and everything like that. So my feeling is that at a certain point, you're cutting off about what is a great human ability, is that humans just love learning from each other. Humans love just supporting each other. Humans just really love putting two things together and creating something that's much larger than, the sum, And, it goes back to the Julian Simon thing that there's only one resource on the planet, and it's human ingenuity. Well, human ingenuity is not predictable. I mean, if I understand the word ingenuity correctly, by definition, you just created something that could not have been predicted before you did it.
Yes. So here's a question that pops up is, so now you've got your who's with great purpose, and you've created an environment where they all are collaborating, they're working together, and they feel like they're bigger than the sum. But human qualities that come up. Well, first of all, is what will happen when this ends. So it's a fear of either abandonment or rejection or being forced out of the tribe. And on one hand, that makes everyone stronger. Competition's great. But how do you create that certainty and that security and quell those fears when you've got the right who's? I guess it all comes down to being very clear on what the impact and needs are. But what shows up for you when I ask that question?
Well, I think the big thing is that you have to tell the past story first, that how you got to here, because my sense is that the way that you're going to do it best in the future is probably based on successes that you've had in the past. In other words, we have that in our 10 times this quarter, we did that why you're a great who. And, I asked people, go back to the past. And I went right back to, like 7 years old. And, and I said, if you want to know what people's purpose is, you can't make it up in the future. You have to go look back. And I said, what has this individual consistently done, regardless of the circumstances? What does this individual always come back to? And I go back to 7. I'm 77, so it's 70 years, and I've just had this obsession about people's experience and what you can learn from your experience. And and I have this story about a lady who lived next to us who was 70 years older than me. And I'd go over because they were a dairy farm. So we got our milk from the dairy farm. We were a produce farm. So I would go over and get the can of milk and bring it back. But she would always invite me in, and, she'd give me cookies. And she had spent her entire life in that house. She had never, even for a night, ever not been in that house overnight, 70. And this was before electricity, before, all the modern technology. She was born in the 1870s. But I just said to her, and I said, Miss Wetzel, when you were my age, what was going on? What was going on? And then she'd tell stories. But the surprising things, she was telling me stories that she hadn't remembered since she actually had the experience. So I was just asking her a question. I got her to time travel backwards to 70. And what I noticed pretty quickly was that adults were a sucker for this. If you're a 7-year-old kid and you ask anybody, when you were my age, imagine, I'm 7 years old. When you were my age, what was going on in the world? Can you remember what was going on? And, you couldn't stop them. They just talk and talk and talk. But the thing that I didn't realize it at the time, I was 7 years old. There's only so much comprehension. But what I realized afterwards was that until I asked that question, they hadn't remembered the experience.
That is, once again, activating those little packages, those feelings. And that's really what story does. So,
yeah, well, the thing is, what you see is this person cannot just do anything in life. They are actually very, very constricted at their early age. There's something that lights them up, and it's good fortune if they have a lot of support early from parents, and they get opportunities where they can really demonstrate. But it's a chance thing. You don't know whether it is. But with entrepreneurs, you can see the early pattern. I mean, one thing I noticed, how many of you were making money while the other kids were trying to figure out what they were doing with their pimples?
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, you were already out making money. How many of you had to get out there and make money? And it's just paper route or whatever it is. You can see this early going to the streets to earn money. And I said, well, how could it ever be different when you got older? So my sense is the storytelling, that the story that they will create for the future in collaborative form, you have to get them in touch with the story they've actually been living, you know. Because everybody said, I could have been anything. And I said, that's a lie. You couldn't have. As a matter of fact, you couldn't have been anything except what you are. Now, the question is, are you happy with it?
Mm-hmm.
And where does it go from here? Where does it go from here?
Yeah. Do you see a positive future moving forward? Exactly.
Don't see it as this lonely individual. See it as, my goal for when I'm 100 is that I'm collaborating with 10,000 ingenious innovators.
Best party in town.
Well, I'm doing my part. If there's 10,000 people, there's going to be 10,000 games. It's and everything like that. But I think that everything you've done up until now is probably, you can sort it out what part of it is useful as you go forward. But I think the passion for storytelling and that combined with the passion for collaboration seems to me to be a perfect, it seems to be a perfect combination.
Yeah, I agree. Multiplied with technology go ahead.
I think you were wearing it out where it just made the person a star. Then what?
You're right.
Then what? Okay, you're a star. Okay, you're telling your story. All right, we got you on the circuit.
Got you on TV. Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right.
Now what?
I think that was, it was shallow, a shallow transaction at the end of the day. That is precisely why I had to quit. I didn't know at the time why. I just had to do it.
Well, there's no multiplier.
You're right. Yeah.
Plus, it's about them. It's not about the value that they're going to create.
Yes.
Yeah. Boring.
Dan.
No. But I'm creating a lot of this stuff as we're talking. It's not like I've been holding out on you.
All right. Well, this is more like a symphony as usual. It seems like every one of these episodes is getting deeper and more profound. So keep on taking whatever drugs you take, and they're working.
Yeah. But this is, I can see, if you look at the titans, the so-called titans and I can see how they've trapped themselves with their personalities. They're just totally trapped by their personality. And there was interesting, I had a personal experience of, I know the limousine company because it's my limousine company here in Toronto. And, I know one of the partners, and he picked me up one day and he said, one of the real treats that I have, he said, is that a couple of times a year, Warren Buffett comes to Toronto, and he comes in, he comes in on a private jet. He just gets off. He said he just walks down. Nobody's with him. And he always asks if he can sit in the passenger seat when he go, because he likes talking. And, we know each other and we've talked and, and he's got a number of meetings, and he says, you drive him around and, he said, I'll just have to phone. And he phones somebody. And then there's somebody waiting at the street when he gets there, and they just take him in. He's got no one with him. He's got no assistant with him. There's no bodyguard with him, nothing. And then he picks him up at the end of the day and takes him back. And he says, it's great. We'll see you next time. What is it? 80 billion, 90 billion, whatever the money is. Story I read about Mr. Zuckerberg, that they full time, all the security guards they have for Mr. Zuckerberg and, for his wife and for his children and Sheryl Landsberg, and a few other people at the company. It's like 60 or 70 security, and they have safe rooms and they have secret tunnels and everything. And, you look at the numbers, it's 80 or 90 billion. So 80 or 90 billion here, 80 or 90 billion here. Why one of them, guarded like a tomb and the other one carefree, carefree? Well,
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah.
Maybe it's what each of them is trying to do. And they've developed a reputation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
I get a feeling that, that destroying things is really a pleasure for one of them, and building things is really a pleasure for the other one.
I got nothing on that one. It's
No, I mean,
other than it just makes sense to me. You're right.
We don't want to get canceled here, but I mean, it's common. We're just talking about common knowledge, and
Yeah.
And the thing is, when it's about you, and at a certain point, seen that before.
You're right. I don't. We've talked briefly about this in the past, and I don't have anything to add other than it is really fascinating. And part of me says, well, I wonder if it's the times, but it definitely is the persona and the anger that's behind it. There's certainly a certain amount of billionaire resentment that exists in our world today that both of them have, but
I think you've been to Omaha, haven't you?
I sure have. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, it's like a family reunion every year. They have 40,000 person family reunion.
Yeah, they're just walking through the halls. Now they've got an entourage. They do have security around them, but it's very different. There's no question. Every bit, all the energy's unique.
Well, not only that, but they're just talking about how they're seeing things, how they're seeing the world, I mean, I didn't, I haven't met either of them. I haven't been there, but Jeff Madoff teaches at the New School in New York, and he has prominent entrepreneurs in as guests for his students, and he had Kathy Ireland in, and
I remember that.
Yeah, and Kathy, boy, she was terrific. I mean, she came in, and she, I think her father was a farm labor union organizer or something, and she grew up. She grew up near Santa Barbara, I think. Not Santa Barbara, but someplace else. And when she was, when she was 12 or 13, she went to the newspaper and she said, "I want to be a paper boy." And he said, "You're not a boy." And she says, "No, I'll be the first. That's not." And she said, "You won't regret this. I'm better than any of them." And, and she won the award for the best. And then one day, she was 16, 17 and looking like she looks. And she was just walking on the beach, and a talent agent from New York, a modeling agent, came up and said, "You're unique looking. You're unique looking." And she said, "You've got something that nobody else has got. And if you're interested, we'll put you in our internship program and everything else." And they went home. She talked it over with her parents, and her parents said, "Yep, yeah. You're not going to get where you need to go by being a paper girl." And everything like that. And very, very clear that she knew it was a bridge out, but it wasn't a destination, and very self-composed and everything. And she became the tomboy agent, she was the only, model like that, looked like a tomboy, and she's tall. I mean, it was so funny because Babs and I went up to say goodbye. And the first thing when Kathy Ireland saw Babs, she looked at her feet, and Babs is wearing flats, And so Babs, Babs is about 3 inches, probably 3 inches taller than she is, but really gracious and nice and everything else. But she's got a $2 billion, company, or Kathy KI, Global, KI Global. And she's just got a single focus. she's got something for women from the time they're 18 until the time they're 75. And she's thought through their life and everything they're going to need, the stages they're going to go through, education, products, and everything like that. And, just a terrific person. But, one of the investors in her thing is Warren Buffett. So she goes to Omaha and she said, Charlie and they were both paper boys. And she said, they're good, but they're not that good. It's all in the wrist, she says.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've got a big team there, right?
And it's all collaboration. She just collaborates with people,
Yeah, that'll be another episode. I'm going to make a note, which is how to do the collaborative deals. So both parties feel good and win. I'd love to get into structures in the future, because I was thinking if she's done it all with collaboration, she's clearly created financial wins inside her own platform that motivates and keeps people motivated and happy. If she was able to keep it together, she's playing the long game. And that would be super fascinating.
Yeah.
So what do you say go ahead.
Yeah, but the big thing here is that I think that, there's a total, value you can create for all the free zoners of putting together a fast way to put together their story, that prepares them better for collaborations.
That is a really, really good idea. And that is precisely what this survey, I'm going to spend a couple days thinking about what has to be gathered so the survey can be told to create collaborative opportunities. And do you think that's something that could be a workshop or a forum? So there's sort of like multiple levels to it?
Yeah, well, I just start off, I always start off, can the thing I'm thinking about, can we do it on a sheet of paper? Can we do it on one sheet of paper? And the reason is you want a sheet of paper to start a conversation, because 50% of the creative team here is the check writer. I was talking to Peter Diamandis, and he said that this billionaire guy who'd sold out was talking about creating a new startup company. And he was saying, who do you want on a startup company? What kind of people do you want on a startup company? So they had a long list, and it was kind of like, what was the place out in the desert that Lockheed created? There's a name, Skunkworks. It was kind of like a skunk work. It was kind of like a skunk works, this kind of person, this kind of person. And we got to the end, and Peter said, can you think of anyone else? And I said, yeah, you're missing 50% of the team. And he says, what? And I says, adventurous check writers. I said, how are you ever going to be able to price it if you don't have check writers on the team?
Right.
I say, you spend 2 years creating something and you haven't the foggiest idea what the price, what's, and I think basically, there are people, and you've already done it with Charlie. To a certain extent, you've already done it with Charlie. And Charlie, Charlie can help you tell the story here. But, my sense is that, in your past is all well, first of all, it tells you all the value you can create just because of your past experience. Whether you're a collaborator or not depends on how much of the future you'd like to share with other people.
Yes.
If there's only room for you in your future, it's not an interesting game.
Yeah. And that, yes. And having the capacity to be uncomfortable, because again, I think there are some people who are so comfortable in their little space and so focused on control that's a hard no for a true collaboration to work. Yeah. I know one of the people in a meeting today mentioned something like that. He says, I haven't done collaborations because I was so focused on control. And I've actually had some experiences with that person, so I know
I think that's a really good because you want to be in control or you want to be in charge. You can't be both.
Mm-hmm.
Being in charge means that you're the one that gives the vision. You're the one that brings electricity. You bring a lot of energy to it, or control. I said you can't be both.
So true. So true. Well, what do you say?
Wrap up. Let's
land the spaceship. So,
how are you? How are you further ahead? I've gotten a lot that's brand new, just because of the discussion.
Me too. I've got a lot of big notes here. So, I think as usual, the best thing you can do, a listener, viewer, is visit Capability Amplifier. There, we've got show notes and everything's typed up for you. And of course, share this with someone who you know would benefit from it. And lastly, if you would like to get my notes and also transcripts, there's a way you can do that. And the process, I have the phone number here. I got to find it. Oh, here it is. Just text the letters CA to 858-434-5316. It's also a place where you can leave a message for Dan or myself, and you can do that also on the website at capabilityamplifier.com. So that's what I got, Dan. Anything else?
Yeah, and 5 stars are the only things that mean a lot.
5 stars, lots of love. Exactly. All right, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.